What brings you to the Netherlands?
Well, a number of reasons, really. First of all, it's a very major partner for us in the world, in Europe. Not often people recognize that for us today, the Netherlands is our second biggest trade partner in Europe after Germany. It's also among our top 5 investment sources. In fact, if you look investments in Europe, Netherlands is the biggest investor in India. So if one looks at it economic grounds, right now I know it's something which has gone down to very deep detail. So we're not talking a kind of a headlines, big picture agreement here. I mean, these are professional trade negotiators who are looking at very sort of fine detail. We have a very, I know our negotiating team. I have very high respect for them. We have, by the way, just concluded a free trade agreement with the UK.
Yeah.
Okay. So these things,
But so has the United States, and they are very vocal about their negotiations with China, for example. We've seen this weekend Trump in the Gulf region. Mr. Trump seems to be looking for deliverables. So the fact that he doesn't even mention the trade agreement with India, does that worry you?
No, because, look, the trade agreement with India hasn't happened. I mean, it's under negotiation. So do be patient. Negotiations which are going on right now, if they do lead to a result, we will see the mutuality of that.
You are confident that they will, and soon, because economies are hurting because of the sanctions?
Well, look, diplomacy is always a profession of possibilities. When you enter a negotiation, you enter it with the idea of having an outcome. You don't enter it saying, I will not have an outcome. So obviously, and I know, I mean, as someone who has an inside knowledge of that particular negotiation, that we've had multiple rounds. Right now, I know it's something which has gone down to very deep detail. So we're not talking a kind of a headlines, big picture agreement here. I mean, these are professional trade negotiators who are looking at very sort of fine detail. We have a very, I know our negotiating team. I have very high respect for them. We have, by the way, just concluded a free trade agreement with the UK. Okay. So these things,
But so has the United States, and they are very vocal about their negotiations with China, for example. United States, you have somebody who wants to be courted in a way, and there's still no trade agreement between India and the US. So does the US understand the rationale of Indian foreign policy?
Well, look, every country comes at the world from their history, from their national interest, from their, you can say, culture and argumentation. I would imagine that the US understands that India is a very, very independent country, which will make decisions which are driven entirely by Indian interests.
Do they really? Because the US claimed that your tariffs on US products would go down to 0%.
Well, we are in the middle of a trade negotiation right now. Okay? It's still being negotiated. So we have to wait and see at the end of this all, what happens. In the middle of a negotiation, we at least don't give interim readouts. So where the trade negotiation will end up, what kind of mutuality of benefits there are, because you have a trade understanding or agreement when it works for both parties. Okay, so it has to work for us too, just like it has to work for them. So don't jump the gun. Be patient. My sense is, if the negotiations which are going on right now, if they do lead to a result, we will see the mutuality of that.
You are confident that they will, and soon, because economies are hurting because of the sanctions?
Well, look, diplomacy is always a profession of possibilities. When you enter a negotiation, you enter it with the idea of having an outcome. You don't enter it saying, I will not have an outcome. So obviously, and I know, as someone who has an inside knowledge of that particular negotiation, that we've had multiple rounds. Right now, I know it's something which has gone down to very deep detail. So we're not talking a kind of a headlines, big picture agreement here. These are professional trade negotiators who are looking at very sort of fine detail. We have a very, I know our negotiating team. I have very high respect for them. We have, by the way, just concluded a free trade agreement with the UK.
Yeah.
Okay. So these things,
but so has the United States, and they are very vocal about their negotiations with China, for example. We've seen this weekend Trump in the Gulf region. Mr. Trump seems to be looking for deliverables. So the fact that he doesn't even mention the trade agreement with India, does that worry you?
No, because, look, the trade agreement with India hasn't happened. It's under negotiation. So do be patient. When the negotiations are over, an outcome will emerge. But again, look, different countries come at it differently. The UK-US trade agreement is not comparable to the trade agreement with India and UK have had. We had a trade agreement which were negotiated over multiple months, in fact multiple years, over multiple governments on the UK side. It's a very, very detailed agreement running to I would say, a very thick level of detail. So I think each one of us will handle it from the perspective of how they do their negotiations. We like to do detailed, specific trade negotiations which produce balanced outcomes. For us, a trade agreement, a trade deal has to be a deal which works for both parties. And if that takes however long, we do it.
Now, when it comes to means of negotiating or ways of negotiating, the role of Mr. Trump is interesting also in another way. He claimed, for example, that he solved the recent flare-up in the violence between India and Pakistan. How do you see his role?
Look, I think where we had the recent fighting between India and Pakistan, first of all, you got to understand what it was about. Okay, it started because it was triggered by a very barbaric terrorist attack in the Indian Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir, where 26 tourists were murdered in front of their families after ascertaining their fate. And it was done in a way in which it was intended to harm tourism, which is the mainstay of the Kashmir economy, and to create a religious discord. Deliberately an element of religion was introduced. And to understand that, you've got to also see that on the Pakistani side, you have a Pakistani leadership, especially their army chief, who's very driven by extreme religious outlook. So there is clearly some connect between the views that were expressed and the behavior that was done. Sorry?
Did you catch the ones that murdered those 26 tourists?
I think we were able to identify who they were because there were pictures of them. The attack, there was a body which called the Resistance Front, which took responsibility for that attack. And that's a body which has been on our radar for a number of years. In 2023, 24 and 25, we brought this body to the attention of the UN Security Council's 1267 Sanctions Committee. And we said, look, we see this as a body which has been created by the Lashkar. Lashkar is the main terrorist group in Pakistan, one of the two main terrorist groups. And we can see the connection. So we had, well before the April 22nd attack, we had already drawn this to the attention of the United Nations. Now, we identified the people, the attackers. We know that they are linked to the Lashkar. We know the command centers of the terrorist groups. Okay, it's not a secret. In fact, I should show you. We have, if you look at the UN Security Council, UN Security Council publishes regularly a kind of list of major terrorists. Okay, so it looks like something like this. This is the UN. It says the list established and maintained pursuant to UN Security Council Resolution 1267, whatever. Now, if you go through this list, these very places, the terrorist list, these are famous, well-known terrorists, notorious terrorists. They have a place of residence. It says they operate out of here. Okay, I mean, there's a whole list of these guys. Now, these are the very places which are named in this. These are the ones which we hit on the 7th of May.
Yeah, I just wanted to verify that those people that you know who they are still not caught. But the operation you mentioned, it's still ongoing. How do I balance that with the claims that the recent flare-up has been settled?
No, well, that is not my assertion, and let me explain this to you, then maybe you would get it. So what happened was, when after the terrorist struck, it was imperative that we have a response, because lack of response, you understand, was impossible in such a situation.
It has been tried in the past not to respond.
Sure,
after an attack.
and we've seen the results. Okay, so our government is very clear. Okay, I accept that may not have been the policy of an earlier government, but our government is very clear that if there is such an attack, there will be a response.
So the response was there?
The response was there. The response targeted these 9 places which were the terrorist centers. They are, as I said, the places are all shown in a UN list. I mean, this is where the terrorists work and live and operate from. Now, after that, the Pakistani military chose to fire on us, and we responded. This went on for 4 days. And after that, the decisive day, I would say, was the 10th of May. On the morning of 10th of May, in response to an attack which they had launched on us earlier that morning, we hit 8 air bases. We basically made those air bases non-functional. We hit their runways, we hit their command centers. I mean, if
as
you look,
part of an operation that is still ongoing.
Yeah.
Why?
So no, hang on. Let me explain. So this is the kind of, you hit a runway, you made the airbase non-operational, or you went after what is the air defense command control system. This is the airbase close to Rawalpindi, and that, I think, compelled the Pakistani military to accept that we need to stop firing at each other. And now what has happened is that at the moment there is no firing, and there's been some repositioning of forces accordingly. Now, when you ask me, so why does the operation continue? The operation continues because there is a clear message in that operation that if there are acts of the kind we saw on April 22nd, there will be a response. We will hit the terrorists. If the terrorists are in Pakistan, we will hit them where they are. So there is a message in continuing the operation. But continuing the operation is not the same as firing on each other. Right now, there is an agreed cessation of firing and military action.
So the operation is dormant, if you like.
Put whatever word you want to, but I can tell you the message is clear. And the message is active.
And for some reason, both armies were able to talk to each other, initiated by the Pakistani army?
Yes, we have a mechanism to talk to each other as a hotline.
Yep.
So on the 10th of May, it was the Pakistani army which sent a message that they were ready to stop firing, and we responded accordingly.
And where was the US in this process?
Well, the US was in the United States. I mean, obviously there were US Secretary of State Rubio and Vice President Vance had called up. Rubio had spoken to me. Vance had spoken to our Prime Minister. They had their view, and they were talking to us, and they were talking to Pakistanis, as indeed were some other countries.
Yeah.
I mean, the United States was not alone in this. I think there were some countries in the Gulf, there were some others as well. That happens naturally. When two countries are engaged in a conflict, it is natural that countries in the world call up and ask and try to sort of indicate concern and what they can do in such a situation. But the ceasefire, the cessation of firing and military action was something which was negotiated directly between India and Pakistan. We made one thing very clear to everybody who spoke to us, not just United States, but to everybody, saying, look, if the Pakistanis want to stop firing, they need to tell us. We need to hear it from them. Their general has to call up our general and say this. And that is what happened.
Now, Trump claims this cessation of hostilities as a success that he brought about. Not only that, he is offering his help to solve a 1,000-year conflict, I quote. Would you accept his help, and do you think India can benefit from his help?
We've had a long history of difficult relations with Pakistan. And the reason for that is that from the very start, we are talking since 1947. Okay, so 1947 means you can do the maths, 1947 to 2025, and figure out how many years the problem has been. We've had this problem because almost at the time of independence, Pakistan sent in, exactly like this proxy people and said, it's not us. These are tribals who are angry. And then it turned out they were Pakistani military people, some of them in uniform, some of them not in uniform. So they've also pursued a radical, I would say, extremist religious agenda, which using terrorism across the border as a way of trying to pressurize us. This has been their history. Now, if you ask me, how do we propose to deal with it? We propose to deal with it bilaterally with the Pakistanis. It is something that we and the Pakistanis have to settle one-to-one. And we are very clear with them that they need to discuss with us. We are open to their discussing with us and ending to terrorism. It has got to be a serious talk. It is something that we need to do between us.
And the governance of Kashmir, or maybe even the lines that separate the different, is that up for negotiations in such conversations?
No, because Kashmir is part of India. No country negotiates a part of its territory. So for us, Kashmir is part of India. There is one segment of Kashmir which is today under occupation of Pakistan illegally since 1947-48. So we are, we would like to discuss with them when they propose to leave that part and hand
There's
it back.
No magic role Mr. Trump can play here.
It is something between us and the Pakistanis.
No. Now, his rationale in offering seems to be, if you put aside those conflicts, he doesn't like conflicts, you can get rich together. To what extent does the situation on the border with Pakistan, but also with China, hold you back economically?
Well, it's a very interesting question which you are asking me as a European. Because
I am.
No, I'll tell you why I find it interesting. Because I think this part of the world is waking up to what it means if you have not given full attention to your security requirements. Okay? Our security challenges were far more threatening than yours. So we had to prioritize security. So, you don't choose between security and economic prosperity. Today you are realizing that. They are part of the same coin.
So my question is naive.
You cannot. No, I think your question comes out of your historical experience. Your historical experience has been that after the Second World War, and certainly after 1991-92, you had the good fortune of enjoying a very favorable geopolitical circumstance. And that has conditioned you to think that is a normal. My situation is I didn't have that situation. I've had difficult neighbors, Pakistan and China especially. I've had a continuing problem of terrorism from Pakistan. So I've always had to deal with a degree of realism, with a very harsh world, very nasty world, which I think Europeans were insulated from. So I'm not accusing you of naivety. I'm just saying that your situation was different from mine, but you are today going through a reality check in your own way. I've grown up with that reality over almost 8 decades. So for me, it's not a choice between, if you are dealing with your security, does it come at the cost of your progress? I mean, defending your country and your territory is the first duty of any government, any people. Yeah. So I think that will obviously get priority. Yeah. But we are confident. Look, at the end of the day, growth comes from strong fundamentals. Fine. I mean, we've had whatever we've had, the conflict over the last few weeks. But I think, the fundamentals of India's growth, the fact that today we are heading to be a $4 trillion economy, we have, as I say, we are in a bandwidth of 6 to 8% growth rate for decades ahead of us. We have very sound demographics in our favor. We are today, actually, if you look at the infrastructure growth in India, which has made it so much easier to do business. If you look at the manufacturing, I think, I frankly am quite bullish about our economic prospects. I don't think meeting a national security challenge undermines my economic progress. My economic progress is based on the fact that today, I have a strong economy, a talented sort of pool out there to draw from.
Strategic autonomy.
Strategic autonomy, but also the ability to attract multiple partners.
Yeah. Is that, and then we're nearing the end of this interview, I'm afraid, but is this something that Europe or the Netherlands should learn from India to balance this security need with economic growth?
I don't think you need to learn from India. I think that realism is upon you already. Yeah. It is your situation. It's, my situation cannot be transposed to you. You have your own security challenges. Look, you had a situation where between your security needs, your trade needs, your energy needs, Europe thought it had optimized the world. Yeah. Okay? Between an American relationship, a Russian relationship, and a China relationship. Today, there are stresses on all three fronts. Okay? That is your situation. You have to discover an answer to your problem through your situation. I've always had a much more a challenging environment in which to operate. But what is important, because I think this is part of the reason I'm here. Look, at the end of the day, there are certain fundamental beliefs for which we need to stand together if we have that belief. For me, terrorism, standing up to terrorism, having zero tolerance for terrorism is a very important part of what we are. I must say we were very, very appreciative of the very clear stance that we got from the Dutch government, that Netherlands from the time Pahalgam happened. I mean, even today, I saw understanding about our policy of zero tolerance for terrorism. I think I see with many partners an understanding that we have the right to protect our people and to defend our people. So, I do see a better future, a closer future between us, where a Europe and a Netherlands, which is in a way standing and thinking much more autonomously for its own interest, finds a reason or finds a virtue or finds a benefit in working with another big center, you can say, India, which also has an independent policy, and we can figure out how this supports each other.
Too many questions left, but if I may ask one, maybe a slightly more personal question. Why, after this flare-up of hostilities with Pakistan, why in this change, why do you, if you like, keep silent for so long? Why is this one of the rare interviews you are giving? Why choose to communicate now?
No, I've not been silent for very long. I had a job to do. I had a job to do at home. We were in the middle of a very serious conflict. When that happens, normally you are very disciplined about your communications. So at that time, we had a communication system. So we had a set of spokespersons who were mandated to speak about it. I'm talking to you because I'm in the Netherlands, So when I go to Denmark and Germany and wherever else I go, it's my job as a foreign minister to communicate.
I hope you enjoy your stay in the Netherlands. Thank you.
Great pleasure.